it's Thursday night, which if it's Thursday night, you know what that means. It's time for some Hammer and Nails. I'm Jack Hammer from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. To my side is my partner, Jessie Naylor. How you doing, Jessie?
I'm doing fantastic. Jack, I don't think it's any coincidence that a lot of those highlights in that opener came against the Green Bay Packers. What a perfect time for that to be not really unveiled because you do it every week, but I love the timing of it. I love the timing of it. I got jacked up, ready for this week.
I noticed it too. It always gets me excited to go through there. See, Jimmy Garoppolo launched that one really nice deep ball too. Hey,
You don't. Well, what you don't understand is I actually cut that right there when I edited it. That was a pick.
oh, shut up. That's the touchdown pass to Emmanuel Sanders in New Orleans. What are you talking about? Anyway, this guy over here, don't listen to him. He loves Jimmy Garoppolo. I know he likes to talk like he doesn't, but he's a Jimmy Garoppolo lover. Uh, I heard earlier this week that that's the fastest way to get followers on Twitter. So I think I know
Yeah.
where Jesse's going at here.
Yeah, you know the strategy coming up this week. Can't wait.
That's right. That's right. But definitely some a lot to talk about. We haven't chatted since the big game on Sunday. So let's kick it off there. Let's go back and do kind of a little bit of a wrap up of 49ers Cowboys. And you go ahead and give me your thoughts, and then I'll take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I really feel like that game went a lot like I expected it to. I thought the 49ers would score quickly in that game. Whether they scored first was irrelevant because I didn't know who would get the ball first. But once they got the ball, I knew that they would score. I figured they would set the tone. I thought they would be too physical for Dallas, and I think those things played out. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things that I really liked about that matchup is even though I expected Garoppolo to turn the ball over, I figured Dallas would do the same and return the favor. And just ultimately, when I looked at that matchup, their running game didn't scare me. Dak is not near as mobile as what he'd been in the past, so that didn't scare me. And I just felt like that team was tailor made for the 49ers. When I went into that game, I was at an 8 out of 10 as far as a confidence level. And I think it pretty much played out how I expected. So happy, obviously, to see the 49ers go back in time, 90s style, beat the Dallas Cowboys. And even crazier that they've got the Green Bay Packers coming up because that is another stemming from the 90s rivalry. So it's really, really nostalgic what's happening right now. But as far as the Cowboys go, come on, man. We knew that they were going to beat the Cowboys. We knew they were going to beat the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'll get to that nostalgia part here too, but I'll start off with the game. And I was really, I was confident going into this one, but when you looked at all the numbers, as long as the 49ers weren't turning the ball over, they looked like the better team on paper. Even forget the records, but aside from the turnover stuff, Dallas wasn't very good in terms of the numbers. When you look across the board, their pass defense was kind of middle of the road. The run defense was kind of middle of the road. They, you know, they'd shown an inability to win unless they run the ball well. And the 49ers have a really good running defense, and we've seen that throughout the whole second half of the year. So I agree with you. I was really confident going into it, but I will say that I was very impressed with the way they took the ball and went right down the field on Dallas. That was impressive. That was old time 49er football, like back in the 80s and 90s, and the way that those teams under Walsh and Mike Shanahan in '94 opened up games, and it looked like how the 49ers opened up the game in their first playoff game in 2019 against Minnesota as well. If you remember in that one, they went right down the field, boom, 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 and Garoppolo hit Kendrick Bourne for a touchdown pass on that drive, but it was right away. They went down and scored, and the offense came out firing, and then the defense went right out, shut them down, 3-and-out, and the first third down of the game, you see Dallas try to chip Nick Bosa, and 49ers have a stunt called, and so they don't get a chip on him, and him and Beckham wrap up, get to the quarterback for a sack, and it just those first two possessions of the game set the tone for really the whole rest of the way. For me, my only concern throughout that whole first half was the lack of touchdowns by the 49ers offense. They continued to move the ball up and down the field on Dallas, but they just kept stalling out on their drives, and that's something that I don't think they can get away with this week in against Green Bay. They're going to have to be able to keep the ball moving, and they're going to have to get touchdowns. because 23 points I don't think wins this week in Green Bay. But was kind of my take of it. And then as far as the history portion, you're 100% right. This the way that this thing works out. It's awesome. You have the Cowboys who have the 70s, 80s, and early 90s rivalry with the 49ers in the playoffs. And now you get the Packers who the 49ers, that's the post Super Bowl era for the 49ers. They had won all 5 of their Super Bowls, and then all of a sudden Green Bay comes around and the 49ers couldn't get by them. And I think this is the 9th time they've played them since 1995 in the playoffs. And so they've got a long history now with Green Bay in the playoffs. And I think this is the 3rd time that they've gone back to Lambeau, fourth time. Because I know Young lost one there in the playoffs. Garcia lost one there. Kaepernick won, and then this one here. I think that's 4, but maybe I'm missing one. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game. But the Cowboys game was good, and then you got a little hairy there in the end on both sides of the ball, but they pulled it out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with you. The lack of touchdowns was definitely a little bit concerning early on. I tweeted out something like, I'm underwhelmed with 13 points, and people are like, oh, how can you be underwhelmed? They're up by 13 on the road. And my point was, if you told me they were going to be up 13 on the road to start that game prior to the game, I would have been happy with that. But watching the way that it played out and seeing how things were going, that 3rd down call where they handed the ball off to Debo, I don't mind that call if you're willing to go for it on 4th. I actually didn't think they should have went for it on 4th. My thought and where I thought they messed up was I thought they should have thrown it on 3rd down, because Jimmy was playing fine up to that point, and Jimmy's good in 3rd down and shorts. I mean, he leads the league in converting on 3rd down. So give him a chance there is kind of my thought. And then, people were kind of upset with it. And I then retweeted and gave the old Steve Young quote, which is, every time you kick a field goal, you're one step closer to losing. And that's a quote that's always stuck with me as far as Steve Young goes. And I think he's absolutely right. And it was close, because what happened was they went up 13-0. Then all of a sudden, boom, that Dallas explosion happened. Bink, bink, bink down the field, slot fade, touchdown. And it's a 1-score game. And you're going, well, hold on a second. The 49ers just absolutely dominated this game. They're only up by 6 points right now. It got a little hairy there for a second, but the 49ers did what they needed to do. That's, again, small little micro things to nitpick, but these are things that we have to look at, because in this Packer game, they're going to have to go out and take that victory from the Packers. They cannot expect the Packers to come in and get 14 penalties and beat themselves and turn the ball over, or none of that. The Packers play sound football, and they're going to have to go out and take this game from the Green Bay Packers. So just those things to look out for as we turn to the Green Bay Packer game.
Yeah, and it's funny because I tweeted out pretty much the same thing, because I remember the quote. I couldn't remember exactly, so I sent it out as a question, and some people responded back to me. So, but and it's funny because I kept getting hit after that. Oh, as the game wore on or they won the game, it's like, aren't you glad they kicked the field goals now? It's like, yeah, of course. I wasn't advocating for them to go for it on 4th down. It was more, and I didn't want them to go for it on 4th down. It's just, when you're moving the ball, that you had a chance, it felt like, to put them away. You didn't. You're still going in at halftime up 16-7, which you feel good about. And then, the second half, the way it works out for the 49ers is good in the fact that Garoppolo didn't make any the other quarterback made the mistake first.
Yeah.
Prescott makes the mistake in the red, just outside the red zone. 49ers score in the next possession. Now they're up 23-7. And so that gives them the cushion for Garoppolo to make a couple of mistakes and, still be able to pull out the victory, because it got close there. And I think you really need to, for me, the biggest positive of that game, and a huge shout out to D'Amico Ryans for the game that he called. Especially that last 8 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever it was, when they didn't have Fred Warner on the field any longer, and Nick Bosa, who had been out since the first half, and the way that they stepped up. But, it was right after the interception, the 49ers put together a nice drive. They didn't get a touchdown, but they ate up about 5 minutes of clock, which really kind of made it tight for the Cowboys to have to rush things a little bit, and that played into the 49ers' favor. But that 3rd and 11 call by D'Amico Ryans, that was a good one, because he'd been showing pressure and then bailing throughout the game, and then they're in that clutch moment in a big, it's like I'm going to go win the game right now kind of moment. Instead of playing it safe, he went after it, he went for it, and it paid off, and they were able to make it work on their end, and even at the end of the game, I know Cowboys kind of moved it down a little bit quicker than you would have wanted to, and got it down there, across the 50-yard line. And as Tony Romo said on the broadcast, I don't know what they're doing. They're letting them get to the sidelines, and as soon as he says that, they call a timeout and line everybody up along the sidelines, and all heck breaks loose. But man, the Cowboys are such a bad coach team. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the
Yeah.
way they mismanaged the clock so bad. Well, not only in that situation, but earlier in the fourth quarter, they get a first down on a fake punt. What are you?
What are you doing?
What are you doing? Do you not realize that you can't have a mass substitution on offense without giving the defense a chance to sub if they want to? So you've got to know that the ref's going to hold you at the ball for a few seconds. You can't. It was hilarious. And then even the end of the game thing, you run the guy down the middle of the field like that, and I guess the Cowboys forgot that they don't get to spot the ball. This isn't flag football out in the street. The referee's gotta be the one that puts it down, and that was hilarious.
No, it is. It's really funny. They just knew none of the rules. Like, how do you not know any of the rules of football? Like, what is going on in Dallas? I don't. Yeah, it's crazy because Dallas seems to have these things happen. This is just who Dallas is, and it doesn't matter who the coach is. It doesn't matter who the players are. They're just kind of a joke of a franchise when it comes to flubbing and blowing it. And you hear it from like the Stephen A. Smiths and all that. The Cowboys are going to cowboy, but they totally did with the penalties, the clock management, all the things that you just talked about. It's wild to me how bad they can be in pressure moments.
Yeah, well, and Steve Young called it earlier in the week. I listened to him he does a show out here on Wednesday nights on the radio, and I listen to him every week. I've been doing articles on it recently because it's usually really good stuff. And he called it last week. He said, the Cowboys always have good teams, but they just don't. There's just something missing, and there's been something missing since 1994 or 90, whatever year, 93. There's been something missing with the Cowboys, and it's obvious what he's pointing to, and it's pointing to the fact that they don't have they have a head coach who's the head coach, but he's not the guy really, right? Because the guy that really runs the show in Dallas is up in the owner's box, and everybody realizes that, and there's just something wrong in Dallas, and that's really what it is. And he had said, that he felt like the 49ers were going to come out and be better prepared. The 49ers were going to come out and just have more ownership of the game and everything like that, and that's what they did. They came out and they took it to Dallas and beat them to the punch repeatedly. And even though they kind of let them get back into it there in the end, they were still the better team all the way through, and it should have been done without Dallas even getting the ball back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the game looked closer than what it was. I think the score that I predicted was 31-24, but I said Dallas would score late to make it look closer and the game wouldn't feel that close. And although the score was off, that's kind of the feeling that I got. Like, that was not that close of a game. Let's be real.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It was a pretty darn good game. And then we didn't have this as a topic, but might as well. It's always fun to talk about the quarterback. What was your thoughts on his game? I do want to talk about it.
On Jimmy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, C, probably a C grade. I actually thought their game plan and how he was executing it was perfect in the first half, because I didn't feel like they asked him to do a ton. And that was kind of what I came away with after he had those flubs in the second half. I said they asked him to do the bare minimum and he did less, because in the second half, that's what I felt like. But the first half, I felt like he was doing everything perfect. And he even hit the one thing about Jimmy, and I've always said, I believe he has arm strength to throw the ball deep. I also believe that he has arm strength to hit some of those out patterns, 10-yard out patterns, but he doesn't do those consistently. He doesn't drive the ball consistently, but he did. He hit a couple of those. I was like, all right, Jimmy, we're in it, right? We're feeling this. And I felt like everything was going good. And even though they didn't ask him to do a lot, what they were asking him to do, he was spot on. Boom, third down here, third down there, short pass here. Like he was doing just what was needed to win that game. And so if he would have just finished out that way, I probably would have given him an A, even if he didn't throw a touchdown pass, because it's not always about stats. It's just what my eyes tell me. And my eyes told me, hey, he's not asked to do a lot here, but when they need him to come up big on a third down, he's doing that. So let's continue to do that. Let's get out of here. And then it got to a point late in the game. I'm like, wow, he's not even going to turn the ball over. And then there we go. Here we go to turn the ball over. Miss Ayuk. Just a couple little things. The one where they actually got gifted, where he threw the ball to Kittle. Kittle was open there. He definitely could have thrown that ball better. It should have been a catch and run. The fourth down where they don't even get a chance to sneak it. Like it just everything unraveled for him, and it wasn't good in the second half at all.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I look at it as it was a tale of two halves, and I wrote that in my post game write up. Was the first quarter, the first half, he couldn't have played the first half any better. If they had the one backwards throw, it wasn't even backwards, but the throw where they try to bring him out to the right, and they're trying to run a leak route with Kittle. And Kittle's open, but he just doesn't have a chance to get it to him because the pressure's right on top of him. The safety blows by both Compton and the running back on that one, and he's in the backfield too quick. And if he doesn't throw that ball there, if he just grounds that ball right there, he goes in at halftime, and he would be 10 of 14 for 144 yards, and that's a pretty darn good half for any quarterback to put up those numbers.
Yep.
And so for me, I felt like the first half he played about as good as you could play. I would have given him an A for the first half. He made the plays that he needed. He made plays on third down. They had 4 times they were 4 or 5 fourth. Slow down. They had 5 third downs. He was 4 of 5 throwing on fourth down. Of those completions, of his 4 completions, 3 of them were 4 to convert it, and then the other one was following the throw where they lost 11, so they were 3rd and 20 or something like that. But he completed the huge check to get the field goal. So he was consistently doing it. The only incompletion I think that he had on third down was the one where he tried to throw it over to Kittle, and the ball kind of got knocked down, hit at the same time. I don't remember. It was to the left side, I think. But no, I think at the first half, I thought he played I think in the first half he played as good as he could play. I would have given him an A. In the second half, I'd give him a D minus, F, one of those two. I mean, it wasn't good by any stretch of the imagination. And I keep, I read an article, or I didn't even read the article because I don't pay for articles, but I saw the headline where his shoulder was hurting him or whatever. I don't buy it. I don't buy that his shoulder was hurting him. Maybe it affected him a little bit. I mean, I get where he's saying, as a quarterback, of course it's going to affect you. You're going to feel it, but I don't think that's why he threw the incompletion or the interception. So he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt from me there. So I gave him a C minus as well. I think for the game, I think that's about where he goes. I don't feel like the 49ers escaped or anything like that. I felt like he did enough in the first half to win the game for him and put him where they needed to go with his play, and then they held on at the end. And after he made his big mistake, but the biggest thing was the Dallas quarterback made the mistake first before they did. It's funny because they both threw an interception that resulted in their team getting the ball almost at the same spot.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I guess the biggest takeaway that I have is that he can't, surely he has to do more to win this game. I have to believe that. I feel like the Packers are a better team, and we'll get fully into it, but he plays like that again, they're going home. I really feel that way. But at the same time, you actually tweeted this out, and I was thinking that he's due for a good game, but you talked about turnovers. You want to give that turnover stat about Garoppolo, the 4 straight games or what have you that you tweeted?
Yeah, that if you look at it through his starts in San Francisco, because that's the only place where he started more than 3 games in a row, he's never had a time where he's turned the ball over 4 games in a row. So that's a positive hope possibly for the 49ers here, because he has turned the ball over his last 3 starts. So this would be start 4. So knock on wood, hopefully that's the case, and it follows out that he won't have a turnover this week, and that would be huge for the 49ers against the Packers.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just it. If they can somehow turn the ball over 0 times, they might win by double digits.
No, there's, yeah, this is going to be a fun game. We'll get into it here, but I'm going to bring this one up just because I think it's funny. Because I'm going to address it real quick. But where is it? I don't even know what he said to begin with. But I love these guys, because in Texas Niner, he's a good guy. He follows my page all the time and stuff. And he says, I don't know what he even said about flipping, but he said something about me being a huge Jimmy fan. Uh, you know what? I think it's hilarious if people think I'm a Jimmy fan. I'm not a Jimmy fan. I'm a guy who talks about the game, and I break down. If you watch my breakdown on Trey Lance, I break it down the same way as I do Jimmy Garoppolo. It's just Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy, and there's a reason why he's the starter. The coaching staff obviously must feel like he's the guy that gives them the best chance of winning. Otherwise, they wouldn't keep throwing him out there. Trey Lance will be the quarterback next year, and I'll be able to do this with Trey Lance. But I don't think Jimmy's as bad as some people want to say, and he's not as good as other people say. I'm kind of in the middle. I like to tweak the folks on Twitter a little bit with some of the different stats that have popped up on NBC or CBS this week. That was kind of fun. But it is what it is. I think that Garoppolo is better than people want to throw stones at him, and I think he's worse than the people that love him the greatest. So I think he's a solid quarterback. Just put
you know what I find funny is 2 weeks in a row now we've graded Garoppolo exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just listen to what we say about the quarterbacks, people label me a hater and you a Jimmy lover, yet we grade them exactly the same. It's kind of funny how that happens, though.
I think it has to do with we've had this back and forth on Twitter before, and we'll just talk about here. I think it has to do with when he's playing good, I give him the praise. When he's playing bad, I say the bad stuff about him. People are going to hang on to whatever they want to hang on to. I do notice on some of your tweets that there is a little bit more negativity than maybe mine.
Oh, for sure there is. Yeah, of course there is.
And so that's the reason there's when there's kind of a negative connotation with some of even the positive ones, right? So I think some people look at it as like a backhanded compliment instead of whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, and I just think it's funny though. I really do find that funny because I'm thinking about it, I'm like, wait a minute. This is 2 weeks in a row. We've basically given him the same exact grade. But if you just listen to the way that we portray the situation or portray it, it's very negative coming from me and very positive coming from you. But we're coming to the same result. It's actually just really funny that it happens that way.
Hey, there's a guy who I don't know who he is, but he popped up on my Twitter last week, and he cracked me up because he was telling me that I hated. He was acting like I never talked about Jimmy Garoppolo in a positive light in my life. It was the funniest darn thing that I had seen in quite a while. Because if you pay attention to like our conversations when we go back and forth on Twitter or certain,
you're folks, always the positive one.
It's funny because this guy was all over me. He was telling me I didn't know my rear end from anything else, and it was hilarious. And that's just like if somebody was to see your page and all of a sudden they're telling you that you're the biggest Jimmy fan there is, right? So
also what's funny is in Twitter, like if you watch what I actually say about Jimmy, I'm actually pretty positive. But when I tweet about him, I'm very negative. So it's just this fun game that happens.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's funny. Am I a Jimmy fan? No, I'm not a fan of any of these guys. Let's just put that out there.
I'm a Debo fan. I want to be clear about that. I'm a Debo fan.
No, I mean,
I'm a fan of.
I cover the team. I try to keep any kind of fandom out of the reporting piece of it. And when we talk here, I try to keep it out of there. Again, when you go through the numbers and you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, there's plenty of numbers that are going to put him in the top 10. Now, where he falls, I don't care. I don't care if you want to say that he's number 15. I don't want to care if you say he's number 20. If you want to go out of your crazy and say he's number 5, go ahead and say he's number 5. Whatever. He's all I know, and I've said this so many times on Twitter, but Garoppolo is the guy that the 49ers feel gives them the best chance of winning, and he's doing enough to keep the team, to help them win. And that's all that matters. They're winning games with him. And when they don't win a game with him, they're done, then that'll be the end of Jimmy Garoppolo, because I don't think he'll be back next year. Well, I don't think he'll be back next year. Let's just stop there, because I can easily make the case for him to come back, but we'll stop.
Oh, no. All right.
Well, it's from a number standpoint, they can make it work. They
Oh, they
really
could.
can.
No. They could make it work.
And they can make it work where he would just have as long and they could give him all the money he's due, and they could keep him, and they can cut his number to probably about 9 million, $10 million, and keep him. Uh, I don't think they're going to do that though. I don't know if I would say I don't know if I would suggest that they do it or if I would say not to, but it's a fun conversation to have whenever the season ends. Uh, but moving on, you kind of brought this up a few minutes ago. 49ers Green Bay preview. Let's get into it. This is going to be a good game. I think. I think these teams match up really well. The one thing I'm going to say before I ask for your opinion on the game, they've matched up 5 times under since Kyle Shanahan took over in 2017. They played in 2018, twice in 19, then they played in 2020, and then earlier this year. The 49ers have lost by 3 points in 2018. They blew the Packers out both times in 2019. They lost by 2 points earlier this year. The only time the 49ers either haven't blown them out or it's been a field goal at the end of the game in Green Bay's favor to win was in 2020 when it was the COVID Thursday night game. I think that says a lot about the way these teams match up.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I expect a very close game. I think, to me, I look at this and say this is the NFC Championship. I really believe that. I think these are the two best teams in the NFC. I think Tampa Bay is a little bit too banged up. I think the Rams cannot beat either of these teams. I really don't. So I look at this and say if the 49ers can somehow get past this one, I believe they are Super Bowl bound. But that being said, there are some interesting things. So a stat that I found on game day last week and tweeted it out was the 49ers led the league in 21 personnel. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's 2 running backs, 1 tight end, 2 wide receivers. And the 49ers lead the league in that. Obviously, they have use check. Not even all teams carry fullbacks, but they lead the league in that by a wide margin. So Dallas had only faced that formation or that personnel grouping 53 times all season long. I thought that was really, really low. And I think it's less about the personnel grouping, but more about the style of play, showing just how physical the 49ers are. And when you go with a Kyle Juszczyk and a George Kittle, a Deebo Samuel on the field, and Elijah Mitchell, they're going to come at you and try to run the ball down your throat. So that being said, the Green Bay Packers, believe it or not, actually faced that grouping less than the Dallas Cowboys. They only saw it 49 times this year. 9 of those came against the San Francisco 49ers, who normally run it around 21 times a game. But the Niners were without their top 2 running back, well, top 3 if you want to include Mostert. And so they had Sermon playing in that game. Juszczyk actually took the first carry of the game, and they weren't able to do what they wanted to do. That being said, even though they couldn't score worth a darn in the first half, even though Jimmy threw the ball backwards towards the end of the game to give the Packers even more points, even though they couldn't run the ball during that game, they still almost won. They only lost by 2. It's crazy to think about that. So when I look at those things, another thing that stood out to me, and I threw this out, you commented, and I think you made a great comment on it, which is I saw something that the 49ers very rarely do. And towards the end of that Green Bay game, Mosley actually traveled with Davante Adams on a key 3rd down after that fumble by Jimmy Garoppolo, actually. It was 3rd down and 4. They tried to throw a back shoulder fade, and Mosley actually went from, I guess, the defense is left, the offense is right, over to the opposite side of the field to stick with Davante Adams. And that gave me a clue that maybe that's something that they try this week. Not all game, but in key situations. Maybe when they're in the red zone, maybe it's when it's a key 3rd down, what have you. But I could see that popping up from time to time this game. So just some interesting tidbits for me. And then the last thing that I will say is turnovers. Jimmy Garoppolo most likely is going to turn the ball over. That's just what we have to understand is most likely going to happen. That being said, unlike Dallas, Green Bay does not turn the ball over very often. In fact, They had 9 games this year where they had 0 turnovers. Aaron Rodgers had, I believe, 4 interceptions all year. So if the 49ers turn it over, I believe they can overcome 1 turnover. If they have multiple turnovers, I believe they lose the game because I don't see Green Bay turning the ball over. So, all that being said, those are the things that I'm looking for as we get into this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna start off with your little piece on the personnel packages because I saw that from you and I thought it was interesting. And so, thanks, Jesse, made me have to sit there throughout the game as I always write my notes as I'm charting the game out. But not only that, that I had to keep pausing it every once in a while because I'd forget to write down the personnel grouping that was on the field because I wanted to track it as the game was going on.
Mm.
What my numbers indicated, and I responded to your tweet with this, was the 49ers actually ran more 11 personnel. They were really good against the Cowboys out of 11 personnel.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason that they're so good out of 11 personnel is because they have Deebo Samuel on the field, and they can put Deebo Samuel out there, and they can run out of 11 personnel just like they'd run out of 21 because Deebo Samuel's a receiver and a running back at the same time. It makes it easy for the 49ers to do that, and it even makes it easier for the 49ers to do that when they run with Kyle Juszczyk as their third down back. So when you have your third down back being your fullback, instead of a tiny little guy like JaMychal Hasty, who's, he's my size, but, he's tiny for an NFL standard, it all blends together really nice. And 21-11, the 49ers can pound you in either one because of the personnel that they put on the field and the guys that they have. So we'll see how it works on Sunday. I'm with you, though, 21-11. I think those are the two numbers. The 49ers are really good out of 12 personnel on Sunday, too. At the beginning of the game, that was where they were at their best, was out of 12. The first couple times they did it, they were able to pop off some big runs that way, and they were really getting shut down on the 21 personnel stuff when it came to the run. So it's a mixture of different stuff, but since you started bringing up stats, all right, let's look at some stats, okay? Let's look at some stats. Number one, Deebo Samuel, you've heard this one already, 7-0 when he runs the ball 7 or more times. That's an easy one. Number two, the 49ers, if they run the ball 30 or more times, 23-1 since 2019. 49ers got to run the ball. If you look at the way that this game sets up, the Packers are coming in here giving up the 30th most yards per rushing attempt in the league, 4.7 yards. The 49ers have got to win at the line of scrimmage. They've got to win up there. That's where they lost. That's why they weren't able to run the ball so very well the first game. Two reasons. They didn't have Elijah Mitchell, but I don't think Mitchell would have made that big of a difference in that first matchup because 97 Kenny Clark was dominating the line of scrimmage. And then behind him, you had the linebacker Campbell, number 59, and he was doing a really good job of kind of filling in those cutback lanes. And they were really sound, and they did a good job there. And then the last one, you talked about turnovers, so let's look at the turnovers. When the 49ers lost in 2018 on the field goal at the end of the game, they were -3. When they lost earlier this season on the field goal at the end of the game, they were -2. When they won in 2019, they were +1 in the regular season and +3 in the championship game. Tells you everything you need to know. And those turnover numbers right there match up with what the 49ers have done this year, right? If the 49ers don't turn the ball over, then they're going to win this game, in my opinion. If they turn it over and they're minus, they're going to lose. I don't see how the 49ers win this game because the Packers just don't turn it over. They have 13 turnovers on the season total. They're +13.
So crazy.
Right, and that's part of the reason why why they have the home field advantage in the playoffs, because they haven't. Their turnovers is such a big deal in the NFL nowadays, and to have a team that doesn't turn it over, that helps you out. And I think that's why Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are so good. They get the ball in their hands quick, so they don't take a lot of sacks, and they don't throw the ball into coverage too often. They're willing to throw the ball, check it down, and live the play the next down because they know that over time they're going to win. It's funny. I listened to Steve Young on the Jim Rome show. He was with them on, what's today now? Thursday? I think he was on his show on Tuesday, so I was listening to it a day after. But he was talking about having talked to Tom Brady, and I've heard him talk about this on KMBR a number of times. I was actually going to write an article about it, but just with everything going on with the 49ers, I had it all transcribed. I just decided not to do it. But it's one of those things where he's like, the pro game right now is so much more college-like than it ever was. He talked about how when he came out of college or was talking to people, he played college and then he played in the NFL, and there was a big difference between the two. And nowadays there's not that big of a difference because you can't play in the middle of the field. You quarterbacks and receivers aren't afraid to go in the middle of the field. In the old days, all heck broke loose in the middle. You go across, you didn't know what you're doing. You're going to get your head taken off, or you're going to throw an interception. Nowadays, defensive safeties can't launch at the receivers. Receivers can run through there without really any kind of fear of getting their head taken off. Quarterbacks can throw in there because it's usually wide open, and that's why you see the middle of the field, is there all the time. And on top of that, like Tom Brady had told them, the flats are always open. I can always check it down to somebody, and there's going to be a guy open because of the way that defenses are playing nowadays. And it all kind of goes back to kind of that college is, making it like college. In college, you have spring ball, and then you have summer camp, and then you play. In the NFL, it's no longer mini camp after mini camp after mini camp. It's the same thing. It's a springtime practice where the team gets together for a single mini camp, and then there's your summer training camp, and then you play. And he really said that he talked about the physicality being down and the game not being as difficult as it was. You just don't have as much time to put in some of that intricacies that you used to have back in the days when you were playing with each other all over and over again throughout the season in the 80s and the 90s. So with the way that the CBA it's really simplifying everything about the NFL, and it's making playing quarterback easier. So I just thought it was an interesting kind of topic, and I don't even remember what got me started off on this, but it was a fun.
You're right though. Playing quarterback today is much easier. Look, the numbers are clear cut. If you go look back at some of the numbers from the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, they're anemic compared to what you see now. It's not even close. And when you think of a Dan Marino throwing for 5,000 yards and 83 or whatever the hell it was, 84, that'd be like throwing for 7,500 today. It's insane. It's so crazy. Like it's not the same at all. And it's incredible. And records are going to be broken because of it, especially adding a 17th game. But being a quarterback today, Tom Brady in the 80s and 90s would have never made it to 44 years old. It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, that's actually what he was talking about. He was talking about the age thing. And I don't know if he was saying that, I can't remember if he was saying that Brady can play for another 5 years because of this, or if he was saying something about Rodgers being able to play for another 5. It was one of those two. But I remember now why he started talking this, because we're talking about Aaron Rodgers and how good he is. So, but that's kind of where we were. And I just, we're going to get into the oversimplification and the difference between where we are right now in the NFL and where they were back in the 80s. What we're like as the quarterbacks, but we're going to take that in a different direction in a minute. But before we go off of this one, I think let's talk real quick before we move off, before we get to our score prediction. The changes between these two teams. Who do you think the changes benefit, the 49ers or the Packers?
Man, this is kind of crazy because the Packers are getting some really good players back that haven't played a majority of the season. Jair Alexander, for my money, is possibly the top corner in the league, and you're getting a hell of a left tackle back. Man, that's a lot of firepower, but I have to lean for the 49ers because you just look at the final 9 games of the regular season and then that last game in this postseason, completely different team from those first 8 weeks. The Packers have been consistent. They've been good all season long, but the 49ers haven't been. They couldn't stop the run to save their lives for those first few weeks. They couldn't force a turnover to save their lives. And now they're doing both at an amazing clip. Right now, this is the best defense in football. I really believe that. All teams included, the 49ers defense is the best defense right now in football. They've got an amazing front seven. When the front seven's not getting to the quarterback, I think that back half is holding up really well. And when they are getting to the quarterback, it's just a match made in heaven. And the fact that they have maintained being able to run the ball while also now forcing those turnovers, I look at this team, and when I see these other teams in the NFL and they're trying to pass the ball and they're trying to stop the pass, and then I see the 49ers who are trying to stop the run and run the ball, I just think that that's really hard to prepare for on 1 week notice, especially when you add in Debo, who they kind of tried to incorporate a couple times in that game, But adding in Debo, kicking Armstead inside, the corner changes, just everything. I feel like this is a completely different team. And it really feels like 2 seasons, the drastic change that has happened for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, looking at it, you brought up Jared Alexander, and he was in that game, though, when the 49ers and Packers played. He's the one that intercepted Jimmy Garoppolo down the middle of the field early on, right? He's the one that when they were trying to hit George Kittle, he's the one that picked it off. They are getting him back, though. He's listed as questionable, but he should play. The big guy that they're getting back is David Bakhtiari at left tackle. It'll be interesting to see how he performs because he's been out for a while. I think he might have played a few snaps in the last game of the season, but it'll be fun to see if Bosa and those guys can line up and maybe take him and challenge him, especially since he's missed most of the year, and see where he is coming back. But those are two really good players, as you mentioned. I do feel like the 49ers have a benefit in this game because I feel like they're better at corner than they were back then. I feel like Ambry Thomas is better than Josh Norman was in week 3. I feel, and definitely better than where Deommodore Lenoir was at that point.
Yeah.
I also feel like Jaquiski Tart is in a better spot than he was week 3, because if you remember, he had missed pretty much all of training camp with that turf toe injury. I feel like in week 3, he was still kind of getting his feet underneath him and getting going. And there was one play down by the goal line where I think if it was now, he makes a pick and, or knocks the ball away instead of it being a completion in front of him. So I think you get that. In addition, there's no D Ford. I think the 49ers defensive line is in a much better position than they were back in week 3 with the way that Eric Armstead's playing inside, almost all the time. They do kick him outside every once in a while when they start to move guys around in pass rushing packages. I did see him on the edge a couple of times against the Cowboys, but primarily he's an inside player now, which I think helps them out. DJ Jones is playing big. So there's a lot of changes on the 49ers defensive side. When you talk about the offensive side, you talk about Deebo Samuel running the ball more and so on. And again, I go back, I don't feel like that's going to be as big of a difference. If they don't do their job up front between at the center and the guard positions, I don't think it's going to matter if it's Deebo Samuel or not, because if you go back and watch the game from week 3, I did a film breakdown on it last night. They're doing all the motions and those kind of things. And you're seeing Green Bay linebackers move and flow like you've seen throughout the season. The difference, though, the problem was that the 49ers were losing in the middle. And so they couldn't run the ball between the tackles to start off the game. They couldn't run outside and because of that penetration there. And then you've got the linebacker number 59, I think his name's Campbell. He just did a really good job, especially early in the game when they were flowing like sweeps. There was a couple of times they ran sweeps to the right side, and there was one time he's flying through the alley, and it's actually Deebo Samuel running the ball to the right side, and he takes the cut lane away. Like, how Deebo cut back against Dallas on the touchdown?
Yeah. Yep.
You could see he's running, and it's Green Bay is overflowing everything with those motion. That's what they do, right? When the 49ers motion guys one way or another, you watch the defense, and the defenses all overplay it. Dallas was overplaying it on Sunday. The Rams overplayed it. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They overplay that side because typically when they motion, that's where the ball's going. So everybody's flowing pre-snap. And we saw the Packers were doing that, and that backside linebacker, if he keeps doing what he was doing early on in that game, which was staying home and filling that backside cutback lane, it makes it really hard for the 49ers to get those runs off. And they struggled in the first half, but they got going in the second half. And the one thing to watch with the 49ers, and we saw them struggle at times, like the Rams game, they'll struggle in the first half, but they come out and all of a sudden, if you're taking something away, they've got things to come back and hit you on. So although I'm saying I think it's going to look really similar, I think it's going to look different at the same time because you're going to have Elijah Mitchell instead of Trey Sermon as the running back. And I think that's the biggest change on the 49ers offense is you're going to get that. He's a more powerful runner than Trey Sermon. I like Trey Sermon. You can go back and you can talk to Grant about this, but I told him early on in training camp that I felt like Mitchell was the best back on the team. Outside of Mostert, he was the better back. He was always falling forward. He was always making the runs, and he just looked the best throughout camp. And so it's been fun to watch his progress as the season's gone on. It's going to be a fun matchup and throughout this game. And I'm looking forward to watching Ambry Thomas. I just feel like he's going to have a fun game on Sunday, or at least I hope he does, because he's really come along, and he's not afraid to let guys get up on him because he's really good at man coverage. So he's not he plays off, but at the same time he's not bailing when he's in his coverage. So it's just going to be a fun game. I think the 49ers have a lot of things to look forward to in this one, and if they just hold on to the football, I think we know who's going to win.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that 100%.
I talked for a long time. What do you think the score is going to be?
Okay, so looking at this game, I do believe again that the 49ers are going to turn it over, but I think they can overcome one turnover. It's just more than that. So saying that, it's going to be razor thin. Again, there are some things that are in the Packers' favor as well. The fact that the 49ers are playing their third straight road game, really it's their third straight playoff game if you just want to break it down. I mean, that last game was a playoff game in the regular season. So, third straight playoff game against a tough team on the road, 6 days instead of 7, and you're traveling. The Niner fans travel really well, but I don't expect to see a lot of red there on Saturday. I really don't. I don't think they want to go to the cold. I don't think Packer fans really give up their tickets like that. So you're not going to have that energy from the crowd that you normally would. They're going to have to overcome a lot here. Green Bay is the best team in the NFC for a reason. All of that being said, I do believe the 49ers get it done here. I believe that they win this, and we'll talk next week and break down whoever they're playing. But I think this is the NFC Championship, and I am going 24-23, last second Robbie Gould field goal to return the favor from week 3. 49ers win.
Nice. I've been going back and forth on this one. I have a really hard time with these numbers in this one just because of the way things are going. But I feel like if the 49ers can hold the Packers to 20 points or less, I think that's where they win. I think they've got to hold them to 24. I agree with you on if they turn the ball over once, they can probably get away with it, because I think if they'd only turned the ball over once against Green Bay the first time around, they would have gotten away with it. Uh, so I'm going to say the 49ers need to, if they hold them to 24, they're going to go. I was on with Sneal earlier, and I'll just say the same number I said with him. I said 27-24 49ers. I don't know how they're going to get there. The one thing, and somebody mentioned this up in I think here it is, Adam mentioned it, Marquez Valdez-Scantling probably isn't playing because he's listed as doubtful. That's a huge deal right there, because he had some big receptions down the field against the 49ers in the first one. Allen Lazard had one too, though, the first deep throw of the game on the first third down of the game. So that helps, because that's one less deep threat that the 49ers need to deal with, right? But
yeah, Rich actually gave you a super chat about it at 10:17. Just FYI.
I saw something like that though. There you go, Rich. Sorry about I was just talking. I was on a flow with something, or I don't know, but I did see it come through. I apologize. Thank you for the donation and yeah, if Scanling doesn't play, how does it affect the offense? I think it just takes away one of their deep threats. That's just one guy that less guy the 49ers have to deal with. Doesn't mean that the Packers aren't going to be as good, but that's just one less explosive player that they don't have to that they have to account for, which uh, I think helps the 49ers out.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it can't hurt, right? But I also think that although different players and Valdez Scantling is definitely better than Cobb at this stage, he and Aaron Rodgers have played together for a long time. So I don't think it's going to be that huge of a deal. The fact that he was their third leading receiver, I believe, behind Lazard and Adams, will it make a difference? Certainly, but I don't think it's the end of the world for the Packers. I don't think that's the reason why they win or lose.
No, I don't. No, I don't think that's. I agree with you there. I just think that's a helpful piece for the 49ers.
For sure.
So I got 27-24. You've got 24-23. 49ers
Yep.
moving on to the NFC Championship game
In Tampa, so that I can go next week. Yes,
yeah.
that's what I said.
No, I was letting that finish so that I can cut this up later. But I would rather say, I understand you want to go see them play against Tampa. I get it. That's awesome. I want to see them play the Rams. The only reason why I want to see them play the Rams is because that kind of finishes off the trifecta of the way that this season's been for them. To go through Dallas, to go through Green Bay, The only other one that makes sense that they have to go through in the playoffs would be the Rams, who they beat in the '89 NFC Championship game. Just kind of finish off the trifecta of teams that they've gotten through to get to the Super Bowl. And then on top of that, what better way would it be than for all this to finish off in Los Angeles with the 49ers taking on the Bengals? Come on now.
Yeah, I know.
That'd
I know.
that would be
That would be wild.
that would be fun for all of us old farts. I'll tell you that for darn sure. But before we jump off, I know we're running late, but I know you want to talk about this, and I think this is a fun one. This isn't a 49er related topic totally. It kind of is a little bit, but you might remember Torrey Smith. He was a wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, and then he was a free agent signing with the 49ers here. Well, he came out with a tweet today, I think it was today, saying that Randy Moss is the best wide receiver of all time. And I just got to wonder when this guy fell and hit his head.
I immediately tweeted back at him and said, well, two things. One, you were way too young to see Rice in his prime, so I don't want to hear it. And two, Rice at the age of 40 put up better numbers than your best season. I think you might want to go check that. Jerry Rice at 40 years old was putting up numbers that Randy Moss was putting up at like 32, because Moss was basically done after that. Jerry Rice is on a league of his own. We can talk about more physically gifted, sure. But there are a lot of quarterbacks that are more physically gifted than Tom Brady. That doesn't make him not the best, or Joe Montana. I know that Joe Montana's years. Steve Young was more physically gifted than both of those guys by a mile. Great quarterback, top 10. He's not better than either of those guys. Plenty of quarterbacks never even made it in the NFL because they're not better. There's a lot of receivers that physically are more gifted. The David Bostons, the Josh Gordons, all of these guys. But there's so much more than that. And Jerry Rice, when he was on the field against the best corners of all time, some of the fastest corners of all time, and Deion Sanders and Darryl Green, he always found a way to get pretty damn wide open. So we can talk about the physical gifts, but when those cleats were on and when those pads were on in a much tougher era, this man was putting up ungodly numbers that will never, ever, ever be touched.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's funny to hear this. It's a fun topic of debate. I don't really even think it's a debate though, for the reasons that I already talked to. I went on that whole diatribe with Steve Young talking about the difference for quarterbacks back in the 80s and early 90s compared to now, and that all plays right into to Jerry Rice. I mean, there was stuff happening to Jerry Rice that just you can't do anymore from a holding perspective, from the way that you can hit the receivers. I think if Jerry Rice was I don't know, whatever Deebo Samuel is right now, 25. If Jerry Rice was just coming along right now, I think you could take I think you could take all of his records and just throw them out the window, because he just rewrite the whole record book if Jerry Rice was in his third year right now in the NFL, because of the way the defenses can't hit guys and run through and everything like that. I can understand it. I do feel that Randy Moss was a heck of a player. Heck of a player. There's no doubting that. But to say that Randy Moss is better than Jerry Rice, come on now. If Randy Moss was better than Jerry Rice, then his numbers would be close to Jerry Rice. Really, right? I mean, especially in this day and age, they would have been better. I mean, I know that he broke Rice's record for, was it touchdowns or whatever in a season? Didn't he?
Rice did that in 12 games.
There you go. That's kind of the thing, right? It took him 16 games, and Rice was injured that year, and he put up 20 something touchdowns. So say whatever you want. Jerry Rice was maybe the best football player that ever played, period.
Yep.
Because of the length of time that he did it. I mean, he was putting up huge numbers, like you said, I think what was he when he played in the Super Bowl with the Raiders? 38, 39 that year,
Yeah.
and he's running around the fields beating scoring a touchdown in the Super Bowl and everything else. No, it's not even close between Moss and Rice. It's a good discussion if you want to put up a couple years or something like that. Sure, maybe, but when it comes to their careers, it's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to be real with you, the only guy that held a candle for more than a 2-3 year period to Jerry Rice was actually Antonio Brown. That 6 year run that he had with those Pittsburgh Steelers was I genuinely think Antonio Brown, if he wasn't a crazy person, and again, this goes back to it's so much more. Antonio Brown's crazy. If he wasn't, he probably would have gone down as the second best receiver of all time, but he couldn't keep it together. There's so much that goes into this. And, watching Jerry Rice with the bald, half bald head and the dreads at 40 years old put up 1,200 yards. It's like, dude, really? 1,200 yards at 40 years old? It's absolutely insane. This guy was too incredible.
Yeah, no, it's not even close. And, I'm fortunate because I got to watch the whole thing because that was right. That was when I had season tickets to the 49ers. 85 was my first year. 2003 was my last one. All the years that Jerry Rice was a 49er, I was at Candlestick Park. I think I missed one game. It was a playoff game against the Bears in '94. I went on a trip to see my sister of all people. She was, just kidding. I love you,
but I love you.
no, no, seriously though, Jerry Rice was the man. So, one thing we need to do, Jesse, before we get off, I'll just throw this out there. Our buddy out in Wales, Gavin.
Mm-hmm.
So Gavin heard you and I talking about around Thanksgiving about how good sweet potatoes are.
Oh, sweet potatoes are the best.
And now he's got a craving for sweet potatoes. Here's the problem though for Gavin. I don't think they sell sweet potatoes in a can in Europe. He's tweeting it out and everything. We might have to help the guy out and figure out a way to get some sweet potatoes over to him.
Sweet potatoes.
But Gavin, hopefully you watch the show and we're talking about you. I owe you a recipe, so you got it. And if you can't find the canned sweet potatoes, maybe you can get some regular sweet potatoes, and I'll help you out with how much you need to get. But
yeah, exactly.
But Gavin's a great guy, and like Luke says right here, Gavin's voice is the most entertaining, and that's when you get him on a call-in show or something like that. That guy he's hilarious. I love talking to him. He's a funny dude from over in the other side of the pond.
Yeah, I love Gavin. He's fantastic. He's always so supportive. He's up till like 3 a.m. watching our shows. It's wild.
Yeah, no, that's what you got to do if you're in Europe. Or their clock's all messed up compared to ours. But yeah, right. No, so I've got the 49ers at 27-24. You're 24-23, a little bit closer than mine. Going to be a fun game on Saturday night. Looking forward to it. Anything else you want to throw out before we check out for the night?
No, I mean, this is come on over to Last Second Sports. We're supposed to be live now. Pushed it back a couple minutes because I got to finish my guy Jack, but yeah, come on over. We're going to talk full NFL playoffs, so it's not just going to be 49ers. So you will get more Niners talk. You'll hear it from my co-host, who's a Lions fan. He's going to make his prediction, and it may not be the same as ours. So I'm curious to see which direction he goes. But yeah, come on over, Last Second Sports. Tap in over there, and as always, make sure you support Jack. Since you're over here, give a like and subscribe for sure.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be awesome. And then also get yourself over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Check out the writing over there. My game preview will be up tomorrow. As soon as I finish it, I've been working on it all day today. It takes me long. Damn, that's the longest darn article I got to write all week, but it's fun. Put a lot into that one. And no, get over there though. Get over to Jesse's channel. Subscribe here if you can. Working on putting a lot of content together for the off season, even though hopefully that's still a month away. We'll see where it all falls out.
I know.
But it should be fun. Thank you all for joining. Hit the like button. Hit the like button, subscribe, and all those kind of things to get over to Jesse's channel. Other than that, take it easy and have a great night. And see you tomorrow night. And I've got a fun show tomorrow, so check it out tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Jump on my channel. Take care, everybody. Green Day. I like Green Day. Aren't they the ones that say